With many schools of thought, there's an extroverted or exoteric and an introverted or esoteric way of experiencing the ideas that these systems offer as pathways for enlightenment or exploring spirituality, as well as personal psychology. This is the second part to a video I did earlier in this series called In is Out. Hi, I'm James, and if you're new here, this is another in a series of videos I'm doing that's documenting some of my artwork and the psychology that I've discovered behind it from more of a Jungian standpoint, mixed in with some alchemical, hermetic, and Gnostic ideas. In part one of this concept of in is out, I emphasized a process of centralizing through a visual experience I had involving the Egyptian goddess Nuit and a rather thelemic concept of the aggregative experience of consciousness and the relationship to Nuit and infinite possibility. Basically, we're talking about reaching my center, and once the center or axis mundi is sensed or experienced, it isn't difficult to find it again as a point of view to regard not only all parts of your life with some impartiality, but all parts of the universe within. This second part is a little more poetic, where I've added some of my own writing into this canvas, which is a little different. It's alchemical, hence the title Solve et Coagula. It's a re-envisioning of a canvas I did in the early 90s. You can see here. I'll put a scan of it, and if I can find the slide, I'll have that up as well. This particular canvas is long gone. The wording in the book was composed by my first wife and basically elaborates on how the viewer receives an impression of the symbol no matter what level of cognition they bring to the experience. Either way, there's a benefit if they're open to it. The eye itself turned out to be the Eye of Ra, since it was the right eye depicted. Feel free to explore that further. For me, it was personal in relation to an injury I had when I was 10 years old. But I digress, and that's possibly for another video. Another thing that I've emphasized before is the importance of constantly learning, constantly taking in new myths, constantly learning new symbols and new meanings to things, and constantly revising your current model of the universe. If you stop and think you know everything, that's where stagnation comes in. That's where a lesson comes in. It's pretty important, but the thing to remember that you're not just stockpiling information. You're equipping the subconscious with more ideas, more symbols, and more ways to talk to the conscious mind, because it's indirect. You can't talk directly, but it can advise you, it can warn you, it can help you, it can show you parts that you need to integrate, parts that are self-sabotaging you. So it's rather important to enrich the pool of the language that your subconscious can reach back to you through dreams or meditations or through different synchronicities that you'll find along the way. This canvas is a fairly good example of that, as a composite of many symbols to convey an idea. And we'll get into that here in a bit. Something that a lot of schools of thought also tend to teach, especially in the Western world, is a teacher within. And when you can find that, you start to listen. And it's like tuning a radio when you find the right frequency. Legends about this are endless and something that makes itself evident with experience, right? With experience. Like breadcrumbs, one can begin to have a sense of various synchronous events that present themselves if one is open-minded enough to see them. Perception is that of guidance and a trust in the process. And I say process because that's how my mind works. Basically through the lens of Hermetica, alchemy, and Kabbalistic teachings. So we get into the obligatory disclaimer. I'm not here to change your mind on your view of your faith or how you see God. I'm not here to mess with your psychology. I'm here to document something that happened to me in a series of events, and it's not really even that big of a deal. It's pretty much on the basis of archetypes being presented to me by my own self so I can learn. One of the other things I talked about probably in my initial promo video was including the process, the mindset that goes into some of the creation aspects. And looking through my sketchbook, you'll see some of this is evidenced here. This one turned out vastly different than the prior version. This could be because it's been over 30 years and I've grown a lot since then. Maybe the sketchbook notes here are meant to capture as many details as possible. At the moment of seeing it in my mind's eye, the question was basically how to do a new version, but with a newer message. What came out was part meditative. As I draw, I can get tunnel vision. I get a little thoughtful or inspired, and then a flow of associative ideas managed to assemble, including words. And that's rare for me. Words don't usually come, but this phrase, in is out is in, kept repeating itself and has for the last maybe 15 years. So I had to address that. And this is what came out of it. This finally culminated in my first real try at writing some poetry. And you can see here in the cards, it wasn't just rattled off. I worked it. I worked it in paragraphs and stanzas, and I rearranged it and typed it out properly. So, I put some effort into this. And no, I don't use AI. I've been doing this since before most of you were born, and there certainly wasn't any AI then. I'm old school because it won't change your mind if you're convinced one way or another. I don't really care. For me, words fail to convey what I see, but I've also avoided being literal as much as possible. So descriptive and somewhat archaic approach seemed to work here in concert and context with the rest of the painting. As far as the actual process goes, it's a coming together of abstract ideas that continue to reveal various levels of thought. Those with eyes to see will meet with the intended experience. Other parts defy elaboration altogether. As much as trying to describe what love is to someone who had never really experienced it. So this canvas was proof finally of years of work culminating into ideas. There's a vast difference between this and that. And, not only in just quality, but the message and what's in there. Granted, this was a guided vision here, and I wanted to recreate it, but not make it the same. And since it's finally starting to speak in the language that I could understand with alchemy, things started to make sense suddenly, which was kind of astounding. For me, this was no less than a second initiation, with the first one being the first video in is out. The feeling of attaining access to an inner chamber was definite, and my dreams not only became more intense, I had the sensation of meeting teachers and having access to a vast library that is beyond the chambers of Selene. At least that's how it was put to me. Sometimes there were points that I wasn't totally aware of what did and did not make it into the details. Similar to the Mater triumphants in the other painting, Since I was open to these specific ideas, the associative tapestry wove itself as the degree of control relaxed. I'm trying to describe the process of being half sort of dreamy, meditative, and I'm doing the sketch. So I'm standing here and I can see this, so I'm trying to capture it. But what I see is made of light. And there's no way to paint exactly what I'm seeing because it's so vivid and the colors aren't even here. So that's hard to describe. There was supposed to be dewdrops on the scarab that I dismissed, and then I found out later that dewdrops represented um, the presence of the holy guardian angel having come through. So they did matter, even though I didn't include it. They were in the notes. We'll go ahead and clip that into closer up, and we'll have that put in. And then there's a lot of notes over here. And then these are the note cards that we were working on the poetry aspect with here. Solve et coagula. To stop the wheel and end the ride, rend the veils and pulled aside. Looking for answers is not the way, but the right questions win the day. In is out, out is in. Seek the center to cease the spin. Sail past the moon on wings of dream, beyond time, space, and duality between. Ride the chariot straight and true, bearing the grail to a wedding with you. Seeking the light and knowing the one, face your ego in the heart of the sun. Two is united, you shall become the essence of being and a light for some. And from this throne you will see that every center is shared with thee. Move it without moving, as a star you will be, the silent child of endless possibility. And I wrote this November 16, 2024. And that's what's in this scroll here. I figured if my psyche was going to talk alchemy, I couldn't be more pleased, because then I had something concrete that is established in the group unconscious. So these are well-trodden sort of riverbeds that are known and trackable, and I can look them up and kind of self-diagnose certain aspects, or especially if they're archetypes that I already understand immediately, well, then I'll dive deeper into the folklore and what's behind these archetypes, because I'm truly convinced I never know enough. At last, I have a set of workable tools to communicate with the entire cast of characters that live in my subconscious. What follows is a general breakdown of this canvas. By no means is it complete. There's esoteric ideas that I can't relate. They're beyond words. And there's going to be people that are a lot more adept than I am that are going to see things on a different level that I haven't even arrived to. And they may even disagree and try to pull me up on that. But at this point, I'm not too worried about it. It stands fine as a work of art. It's just one that I haven't released because it's too personal. It's not really for everybody, but in the end, it is for the future, so it's fine. We're just gonna kind of wing it from here. I have a lot of points to bring up, but they're all over the painting, and it'll be choppy. I'm sorry, but it's kind of my editing style. Obviously, the first thing is that we wanted to upgrade what I thought was an Eye of Horus at the time. Turned out to be an Eye of Ra, but they're equally as powerful. They just come from two different time periods, two different eras, because in the story, Horus replaces the father, well, actually his grandfather, because Horus was the son of Osiris and Isis. But I'll see if I can find a graphic. The pineal gland, which is your third eye. So the brain structure and whatnot is actually portrayed in the cross section of the head through this eye. in a way that it's kind of obvious how the Egyptians knew exactly how it mapped. So, and there's some interesting geometry involved if you want to look that up. Basically, we're talking also about a pyramid. A pyramid is a ray of light. So is an obelisk. When you see those, that's what they are. It's just a big ray of light. But um, we're talking about something that's dimensional, so that's why there's a shadow here. It goes back further, but it's more of one of this shape here, where it's three-sided rather than four. Over that, we have the Starry Woman, and that alludes to the first video we talked about earlier. And she represents the starry night. She represents the Milky Way. When you can see it without light pollution, our sky is actually well lit at night by stars. But ultimately, she represents infinite possibilities, every single outcome to every possible. She represents all of totality and the unmanifest in that regard. And then you have that in conjunction with the hadith. Now, this is supposed to be a winged disc, but I chose instead, my notes alluded to it becoming an Orphic egg instead, because it's actually undergone a process. So this would represent uh, it being lifted up, but we're also talking about a rubedo and an albedo mixing effect in the feathers of the wings, and that's alchemy. That's red and the white are mixed. But we also have the Kundalini snake, the serpent here winding up, and it's crowned by the 12 stars. Well, these represent the 12 zodiacal patterns that we're talking about time and the way that the zodiac rotates. So you have something that's experienced and it's cognate of a cycle in time. And that's part of why there's a spiral vortex as well. So there's dynamism going upwards as well as horizontally, which alludes to part of our cross for the Templars, which is manifesting the spiritual in matter and the material in the spiritual. So it's a fusion in that regard. So there's a lot of coming together here in that. The blue here is lapis lazuli, which is a Middle Eastern stone. It's kind of rare, and like the Egyptians, that's the blue that you see in King Tut's inlays, and they even ground it up and used it as eyeshadow and things like that. And the fire here is a spiritual fire. This is the passion to keep going. That's what fire is in alchemy. It's the emotional drive and staying true to your work for the sake of the work, not necessarily focused on outcomes. But it's that passion and drive to continue and carry you across difficult times that are bound to come. So that's built in. Now you have a rather stark landscape, and that echoes something from before. But in this regard, the landscape became dried mud, and you have distant mountain sort of valley. So the cracked mud is kind of a metaphor for all of us, where we think we're actually separated, but really we're connected from the earth. I mean, we're all connected, but we have this perception of being separated from each other. So the whole landscape is cracklered like this. And then you have the scroll that's laid out, that's the bit of wisdom that's manifested here. Now, the legends behind the Orphic egg, you guys can look that up yourselves. I mean, for me, it has a whole lot of meaning. You're talking about other rabbit holes of legends and things that pack behind it. So this is it's active. That's why it's full of spirals. There's stuff going on here, and there's a trinity going on inside of this. But ultimately, this becomes the inner child. This becomes in the heart. It becomes everything. So Platonic solids ended up included because there was a progression here, and I got into a study group with some friends, and we were going over the theology of arithmetic, which is an excellent book you can get. I think there's a PDF as well by Keith Critchlow. I'll put a better picture up, but this talks about the decan, but it also talks about how each is sort of related to each other. And if you look close, you'll find the tesseract is in here. Kind of interesting, but I ended up actually getting some, so I had good reference and I lit them in a similar angle so I could try to get them in there. We're also looking at overall as something as a golden dawn. So there's, the sun rising. The sun is connected with this, and the sun is swallowed by her every night and given birth every day. So that's the tie together. This is Khafre here. The scarab rolls the dung beetle from east to west pattern, and it rolls it in a perfect ball. And then that's when you see the scarab pushing the sun disk along, and you'll see it sometimes in her belly. And then she gives birth to the sun every day. So this is going on. So he's represented as a golden scarab as a solar reference. Then we have the lamp. We have a light, it's spiritual light here. It burns with no oil and no wick. And it sets a different light on everything besides what we're getting in the scene. So I tried to get it to light up the parchment in just the right way that gave it enough wrinkle bumps and things like that as well. So it was supposed to be more interesting. But this flame is representative of something. I can't really go into much further than looking in here in the heart. So convinced myself that there was some hidden aspect to, say, John Dee's hieroglyphica monad. In the end, it was fun. It was informative. There was parts of it that came through dream, and some of it I'm not at liberty to explain. But despite all of this complexity, in the end, it's very simple. If you can find the center and realize that your center is the same as all centers, then you start to realize that we're all connected. It's really simple. And then you have to realize there's a lot more to you. You're not your emotions. You're not your situation. There's a simplicity of a rhyme that says to me over and over that in is out and out is in. Seek the center to cease the spin. If you like the video, please hit like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for spending time and paying attention. Beauty in truth, truth, beauty. Thanks so much.